Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at the BRX Do-More PLC Ethernet Remote I/O Controller BX-DMIO. Now, detailed information contained in the video can be found at accautomation.ca. A link has been put in the description below. If you have not watched the other videos yet, there will be links in the description below that will start you at video 1. There will be links to the rest of the videos in the series as well. So last time we unboxed our DMIO, or Remote Ethernet Controller, and we placed some cards onto it. So let's just take a look at our physical hardware that we have. So here we have our CPU unit, and then we have our BRX BX-DMIO-M unit. So we have 120 volt power supply here. We are also using the 24 volt power supply on board to power up both my input analog card and my output analog card. And then we have our mixed input and output card right here. We've also taken our simple analog tester and we've wired up to our first input that we have here for our analog. So that is our wiring of our unit, and then we also have our RJ45. It's our Ethernet cable. It's connected into the Ethernet communication port right here, connected back to our router, and as well as we have our original CPU unit connected back into our router with our Ethernet cable. And currently right now we're in stop mode right here, actually terminal mode, but the program is stopped. So that is our wiring that we've done for our remote I/O. Now this unit here can be anywhere else in the plant that we'd like, or else in our application, far away from our CPU. So we have multiple points to control basically at the same time. So now the next thing we're going to do is call up our BRX Do-More Designer software. And in the software, the first thing we will do is we will address our remote I/O unit. So in order to do that, there's a couple different ways of doing it, but the best way is if we go into the launch pad, and when you installed the Do-More Designer, it came with a program called NetEdit 3. So if we double click it, it will call up our net editor. And what this does is it basically will go out there and search our system and determine what it finds for things on the BRX system. So in our case here, what we found is we found a CPU unit. It has an address of 192.168.1.11. It's unit number 0. The name of it is a BX-DMIO-1E-18. It's a Do-More PLC. It also has found our DMIO unit located right here, and it's assigned 192.168.1.22 with the ID unit of 1. It is a DMIO, and it's a BRX Do-More I/O controller. Now notice that we have brackets on here because it has not been set up per se. So again, we will look at the top one. There's my CPU, and it gives me other information like my firmware, my booter, my switches. There's a lot of different information here. Do-More settings, general, and Do-More help. So if we click on this one, you'll see again Do-More settings, DMIO settings, the general. We can start a web configuration on it, update the firmware, update the booter. So there's different ways of doing that. And in order to tell if you actually need to update the firmware or the booter, what you would see is that F in this chart represents that there's a firmware version. So if there was a star there, you would indicate that you would actually have firmware to update. Under the B, if there was a star there, it would mean that there was a booter file that needed to be updated. So more detailed information is actually contained at our website at accautomation.ca, where you'll find how to see that and what it looks like and update the firmware and booter. So in our case here, we have brackets on here, meaning that it's been self-assigned or automatically assigned a I/O address. So in our case here, we like to use static IP addresses. So if we double click on this, it'll actually allow us to go up here. Instead of obtaining IP automatically, we will use the setting. So we will use basically all these settings. So let's just put them in. So this is going to be 192.168.1, and we'll call this 133. Our subnet mask, in our case, 255, 255, 255, and our gateway is 192, 168.1.1. So we're going to actually assign that I/O address. So we'll say OK. So again, net edit 3 can be downloaded individually, and as I said, when you download it individually, you actually get the latest version. I do have the latest version because recently there's been an update for the Do-More Designer software, and that update version was included. So now you'll see that my bracket's no longer there, and that's the assigned unit number that I have here, or assigned IP address that I have. So, and if I wanted to, I can change that module number. Instead of 1, we can change it to something else. We can change the name. Instead of the actual name of the controller, we can change it to something more meaningful in our network if we wanted to. But in our case here, we'll leave it as a default. And our description, again, we can change it so that we can tell exactly what this is doing within our network. We'll just hit OK now. And that is what we're going to do, or that's all we need to do now for the net 3. So let's close this out. So let's exit out of this. So our controller is all set up. We have the new address now. Next, what we'll do is we'll go to our project browser and we'll go to our system configuration. Now we can get it through the project browser here, or we go to PLC, system configuration. And when we're here, what we do is the first thing it is CPU configuration. You'll see that here's how we set our IP address for our main CPU. In our case, again, as we mentioned, it's 192.168.1.11. And we can hit the configure if we want to change that to something other. Again, we already have a static IP address for this unit. Next, if we go down to Ethernet I/O master, and the first thing we'll do is we will enable the Ethernet I/O master, and it automatically pulls in the information from what we just showed you to set the IP address for it. So once we have the enable there, then what we want to do is we can set up our slave units this way, but we know that we've already, we can hit that, and you'll see that it automatically pops up with our slave address here that we have, and we've already set to the IP address there. So this is another way of doing it. I prefer the net edit 3 version. So let's just close that. Then after we've done that, we can add our multiple slaves. And what we'll do is check on the one that we're right here. That is the one that we just added. And we'll just hit add selection. So that's exactly what it did. It brought it back into the Ethernet I/O slaves area. Then as we hit it, we can then go down here, we can delete the slave, we can rescan slaves I/O. We can edit the slave. Let's do that. And when we edit the slave, what you'll see is, again, we can rename it. This is the IP address. This is the pull rate. This means that it's going to go out there and pull as fast as it can. Or if I wanted to, I could pull it every 100 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds, whatever that I feel I want to. Then what we have is we have a check mark here that if we check it, it means the CPU remains in run mode on a slave error. In our case here, this is going to be part of our I/O, so we don't want to, if we detect any errors at all, we want to drop the PLC out of run mode. for our application. But just remember, you can make sure that if you have a slave error, it will not run, or it will not drop out. And then the last setting here on a slave error, we can hold the last state of our inputs, or we can clear those inputs. So either way, this is what the PLC looks at. So we're going to do hold last state, and we'll just hit OK. So then we can have a rescan of I/O if we want, and it will update the configuration. But we've already done that basically when we added it to the unit. So here is underneath our Ethernet I/O master, you'll now see our slave unit. And like I said, it's already gone out there, it's already checked everything, and now we know the cards that are on our unit. So right here is our BX-08 CD3R and our I/O mapping. So you'll see that our inputs are X16 to 19 and our outputs are Y8 to 11. Then if we go to the I/O mapping of our analog in, you'll see that the actual input I/O is X24 to 47, and it's WX1 to WX8 is the actual input I/O units. And then on our outputs, we have X48 to 71, and we have WY1 to WY8 for our outputs. So again, very simple to do that. And again, if we right click, we can delete the module, we can configure the module, we can view our specs, which actually go right to the website and pull up a website to view those specs, or the manual. Configuring the module, it'll actually bring into our configuration screen where we can, as we've done before, we can put in scaling, etc. for our units. So I put a link in there that we've gone through the scaling of those before, so you can review those at your leisure. So the other thing we can do is we can right click and we can see the I/O map, or see the I/O in data view. We can edit our I/O mapping, we can edit our I/O documentation. So if we look at the mapping, you can see here that it just brings us down into our system configuration from where we were to our I/O map. So let's go back, and we go here. So that is our system that we have now. And we'll just say OK. And right now, it's showing us in our project browser all the different objects that we can have, our warnings and our slaves now, because we've added this module to our project. So let's save this, and we're going to transfer this to the PLC. And one thing to note before we actually do that is that my Ethernet card is not communicating very fast. Now remember, our polling rate is 0 milliseconds, so it's going to try to communicate to this unit as fast as it can. So let's just transfer the PLC, and we'll download this project in program mode. Okay, and you notice that we have a warning. If we have a warning, we can always call that up. It says one or more masters are doing a problem. So probably when we first downloaded it, it said that. So we can open this up to view it. And there we go there. So again, it just takes time to clear those errors out, and then everything's good. So we're good right now. So let's just close that down. And there we go. So now our program is functioning. You'll notice that our light is almost solid right now all the time. And remember, what we've done is we said that our CPU will come out of run mode when we go to an error. So we'll test that in a minute. So let's, I do have a program in the controller right now, and we have our not timer 1, it's going to timer 0, and we're timing for WX1 time. And WX1, if we put up here on our data view, is actually our analog signal. So if I take my pot and I increase it, you see it increases or decreasing the potentiometer, we will control our analog, which is, we're seeing that right away. And then we have our output, Y8, which is our first relay output on our mixed I/O board right here, input and output. So let's just put up Y8 as well. And right now it's off. So, and then what we're going to do is currently right now we are in stop mode. So let's just turn this into run mode. And while it's running, what you'll notice is that as soon as I count to my 10 seconds, it will turn on the output. There we go. And then it will turn off the output after the next 10 seconds. So it's just going to cycle that output on and off for me. You'll notice that my program here, when this is done, when this first timer is done, then it turns it on until timer 1 is complete. Then Y output will come off. We also look at our output, WX1, and make sure that it's greater than 100. If it's not, then I've probably lost my analog signal, and that's how I protect it. So let's just turn this down, and you'll see how when I turn it down, we'll go right down to there we go. That's going a little quicker now. And you can see if I turn it down all the way, right, it turns off because I'm under 100. And I don't want my relay chattering. So let's just give it a little bit more. There we go. So it's just cycling back and forth. Now what we'd also said was if we lose communication, so the first thing we do is if we unplug this unit, okay, the first thing you notice is that my CPU now came out of run mode. I've got an error light on my remote I/O unit as well. So I know there's something wrong with the system. And you can see here that I have my error light here. And right here, one or more masters indicating a problem. And the expansion is pointing at critical error. Most likely slave is offline, which is exactly what happened. Now again, there's bits in the PLC that we can pick up on to actually notify exactly what it is and maybe take counters. But remember, we've taken it right out of stop mode, so we'll just say okay there. We will correct our problem, plug that back in, and it will self-heal itself. The error lights then come off, but remember, I now have to physically put it back into run mode. Let's stop it. And now we're back into run mode, and we're back turning on and off the output. The other thing we could do is actually lose power. If we lose power to the remote controller, again, what happens is my CPU automatically goes into stop mode. Again, it's that switch setting that we did. And then when we turn this back on, again, it will detect whether or not it's on. The CPU will then try to correspondingly communicate to the unit. And then what we'll do is turn that off, turn it back on again, and then we're back in business with communicating back and forth. Now the other thing we could do is actually power off our main controller. And when we do power that off, again, you'll notice my red light goes off. And then when we power this back on again, it will cycle start. There we go. And it will continue the operation. Again, it wasn't a slave that stopped it, so the CPU, when it goes down, it automatically will start back up again. Again, I have my warnings, and I can check my warnings out through my I/O, and there we go, and they automatically will reset themselves. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below. If you have any questions about the video, please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer it. If you want more information about us, or you want our free ebooks on numbering systems or robust data logging, please click on the link in the description below to get it. A new video is put out every Monday, so make sure you hit the subscribe button to get more videos like this in the future. Remember to click the bell beside your subscription to actually receive those notifications. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.